He has it all. The voice. He doesn't know that.
Come on, Mike. I can't listen to the presentation. We can call the public library.
On something local, right? Boulevard East, wherever it was. And three students kind of came up and they were like, "Hey, like we'd like to talk to you about this. Can we do this?" And I was kind of taken back. Like growing up in North Bergen, I kind of like loosely knew about this. Like I've heard people talk about it, but the fact to see like a bunch of like 16, 17-year-old kids want to talk about this and make a film about it, and kind of the weight of them, like, sitting in the same classroom.
No,
Yeah, there's no.
Sound on Zoom. She's a
They're reading my websites.
I just moved them closer, so it should be.
Okay. So again, right, these students came and they were like, "Hey, can we talk about this?" And I was sitting in a classroom in North Bergen High School, the idea of these two girls probably sat in this same classroom at one point. And in a classic kind of North Bergen fashion, I had to run it up the flagpole and get approval, right? And I got the green light. Students made a really great film. They got to look at a piece of history, right? They got to meet, local officials, people that were involved, and they got like a real hands-on story. So for me, I've been kind of sitting on this and waiting and waiting and waiting, and now it just kind of seems like the right time to do this. So today we will take a look at this case. It's a tragic case, right? We will take a look at the kidnapping, the investigation, and the ultimate confession. Okay. Now, again, there are the two young ladies, right, in question. Again, doing the research on this was probably more difficult than anything else I had to do, because it's the internet and it's the Wild West when it comes to information on there. So there, again, talk about local rumors about these girls and in the case and everything. The internet was even worse to try to decipher what was important and what was just, guys on the internet. But I tried to get just through the cold hard case here, right? So Marion Pryor was 17 years old, and her friend Lorraine was 16. They were last seen in Richfield on August 9th of 1974. And it's the last time anybody had confirmation of where they were and where they were headed. Both girls, by all research and all accounts, were popular, they were well liked, and not known to hit, which in like the modern world, right? It's like that seems like such a foreign concept to be like, I'm gonna hitchhike, right? Even when the students did the film several years ago, one of their first questions was, "What's hitchhiking?" And it was kind of like I had it like that's when you're watching a movie, six come out, get a call, like that's hitchhiking. They're like, "Oh, people do that." Yeah, people do that. They were headed to Garden State Plaza. They were going out to France. Goal was to buy bathing suits. That's what they were doing. Okay. And when they did a return, families immediately just had a concern, and they wind up reporting them missing the following day. So with the timeline of events here, and again, this is extremely graphic, and I try to kind of pull out a lot of the graphicness, right? Just because it is a lot to hear. All right, so on August 9th, right, Marion and Lorraine, they're dropped off by Lorraine's boyfriend at a bus stop on Broad Street in Richmond. They're expected to return home later that day, but they never made it to their destination. Okay, their families again start searching about 10 o'clock at night when they don't return home. So they start retracing all the steps they needed to retrace, right? People headed out to Paramus to look for them, people are checking all local kind of hangout spots, and there's just no sign. So on August 10th, North Bergen police are contacted, but the initial response was that they just ran away. Right? Hey, it's summertime. Maybe they went away, they had some fun somewhere, right? The police kind of brushed it off a bit. I guess, in my rationale, right, and again, just studying history, the 70s have a reputation for being kind of a wild time. And there was kind of a nonchalance about stuff, and I don't want to fault them, I don't want to throw them under the bus, even though they probably should have looked a little further into this instead of just saying they're just kids having fun. Okay, and then again, there's also like the fact that when the police do start searching, there's a lot of false sightings. There's people who said, no, I saw them last night at the park. No, I saw them over here. No, I saw them over there. So there's like, and it's like people that knew them, they were like, no, we saw them yesterday, saw them this morning. Like there were people who actively, I don't want to say actively misled the police, but like people who kind of pointed them in the direction of saying they just ran away. They're at somebody else's house. Now, on August 14th, 4 days later, a Montvale resident was walking their dog and found the two girls behind an apartment complex in a pretty wooded area, both nude and both bad. They were both beat. The bodies again, and again, guys, this is pretty graphic, right? So it's not for you, I understand. They were both found nude, side by side, tied with ropes, right, around their leg, extremities, cigarette burns, and signs of torture. Both girls were sexually assaulted, and the location of the bodies was about 20 miles from where they were last seen. Which suggested to investigators up in Montvale and the Bergen County Sheriff Department that they were moved after they were murdered. So we have these layers to what's going on. Montvale police give way to the Bergen County Sheriff's Department. They now run the show. The state is involved in this because, well, we're in two different counties. And it's going to get a little more into a hairier territory here. So again, it's treated as a runaway situation, which again, that postpones the investigation, right? Again, the North Bergen police are aware these girls are missing. They're missing for 4 days, and it's kind of hard to imagine today, right? With our, Amber Alerts, and we're so connected that if a kid goes missing in, Millville, New Jersey, right? We get notifications up here about it. Okay, there is no notification system, right? It's like the guys on duty were the only ones that might have known that night, and then the next day, like maybe one guy was told, maybe the desk sergeant was told, hey, like there's some girls missing. If you told them the rest of the cops, that's a whole different story. But they didn't send a wire out to every neighbor in town. It wasn't going to reach Montvale that two girls from North Bergen were missing. So we have this, and again, these sightings, most famously, a waitress says she saw them. And again, not true, but the cops then started to look back closer to home, right? They were checking out on 17, on 46, and kind of stopping everywhere, asking questions. Waitress out near the mall was like, no, I saw them, they were going back home, but she gave some answer, which, like, in researching this, you're like, why would she even say that? Right? Just keep your trap shut. Again, investigators now believe, right? They're speculating the girls have been picked up while hitchhiking, and the families really argued this. They really were like, they were not going to get into somebody's car that they did not know. Right? The plan was to take a bus. Right? Plan to take a bus. They are not going to divert from taking a bus. And again, from kind of looking at just these girls, right? And making some phone calls and getting to look at like their school records, right? I personally don't believe they're hitchhiking, right? Just from looking at it, right? Good grades, right? Involved in clubs, right? It's not like these kids, they're not wild kids, right? The police then start to realize, once their bodies are found, they start realizing what's going on, right? They start canvassing local sex offenders, right? Throughout the Hudson, Bergen, Essex County area. They start questioning family, they start questioning friends, but there's no leads. It's just dead end after dead end after dead end after dead end. At the time, and this is like was like really bizarre, like I grew up here, like I knew some questionable characters growing up, but there was a lot of serial killers active in this area in the 1970s. Most famously is Richard Cottingham, right? He was dubbed the torso killer. But there was also Robert Breldon. And again, there was probably about a dozen more that operated out of like the New York City area during this time. So there's a lot of people, right? Cottingham is kind of the man that they point the finger at right away. He's been convicted of murder, strangulation, sexual violence, mutilation. He's like a terrible human being. The similarities though between Cottingham victim and the state of the two young girls really drew a lot of suspicion to him. However, there's no direct evidence that linked to these murders. And during kind of my looking at it, speaking to some officers who have real kind of insight to what was going on, Cottingham was known for keeping trophies, right? I don't know how many people watch like, you know, the Criminal Minds shows and things like that about serial killers, right? Cottingham was known for keeping jewelry. And when he was really looked at, he did not have any jewelry that the girls owned, right? Which was his kind of thing, right? To take the treasure, as they're called in the world of psychoanalysis. But I digress. Right now, despite the extensive effort, the investigation stalled due to a lack of physical evidence and eyewitnesses. The family, especially Nancy's family, pushed to keep the case in the public eye for decades, right? And you know, Nancy's sister is still often, well, now that the case is closed, she was often interviewed like in 5-year increments. You know, it's the 20th, it's the 25th anniversary, it's the 30th anniversary. And you know, she continued, right, to fight the good fight, right, draw attention to this, right, seek out help. There were people, you know, and again, when I was doing the research, there were people who were like, no, I spoke with Nancy, we offered help, right, we gave this insight, we gave that insight, you know, so she really was active in getting this case closed. Another problem that really made this case extend is most of the files involved were damaged or lost. Some of the records here, right, which contain no evidence, right, but just records, testimonies, interviews with, you know, mom, dad, brothers, sisters, neighbors, all these people, fell victim to a water line break in the police department. Files were destroyed. Case this old, right? Material that was kept in the state's possession, right? Material that was kept in Bergen County's possession, just degraded, right? It's a case from the 70s and it gets kind of shuffled around. So DNA samples that were found, they were rendered useless when DNA testing became a thing. At the time, there was no DNA testing. There was something called blood typing. And all it did was tell you, well, that person's type A, that person's type B, then and so on and so forth. It couldn't say like, oh no, it's that person over there. No, it just, you have the same blood type, that's all we can know. Again, it's New Jersey's probably the most notorious cold case. Again, for nearly 50 years. And we'll get into some of the other theories after this. This is Richard Cottingham, a very young Richard Cottingham. He is still alive. He is still locked up. He is not ever going to see light of day yet. But
I thought
did he pass away finally?
he did.
I try not to pay attention. I try not to pay attention to.
He supposedly confessed to the,
I don't know if he passed away.
FBI,
He confesses to the Bergen County prosecutor.
confessed to something, but I thought he died shortly thereafter.
I'm gonna have to double check that. I'll double check that, but I'm not, I think he might still be unfortunately hanging on. Cottingham again is this convicted serial killer. Again, he's known for these horrific crimes. He was active, as it's called, he's active for about 20 years. Between several brutal murders in New York and New Jersey. He's arrested in 1980. After he had a failed attack on a prostitute in New York City, which led to his conviction of the multiple murders. Despite his suspicion, he never confesses to the murders. No, which for these kind of people is very it's very weird, right? And it's weird to get in their minds, right? I try, like when I teach history classes, I try to tell kids like, oh, we gotta get into the mind of, George Washington. Oh, we gotta get into the mind of, Abraham Lincoln, right? To understand what they're doing. But when we talk about like these people that are real villains in history, I tell kids like, don't bother. Don't bother trying to get into their minds because you're never gonna understand what they're thinking. And when it comes to people like Cottingham and serial killers, they are bizarrely like proud of their track records, so to say. So the fact that he never admits to this is really telling that he might not be the guy. However, he confesses in 2021. Again, he confesses to the crimes, right? He admits to abducting the girls, holding them captive, sexually assaulting them, and then even drowning. However, the confession does match details that only the killer would know, and we solved the case, right? The case is solved effectively. He's already serving life sentences for other murders. So again, confession basically just brings some closure to the families. Again, though late, the confession allows investigators to finally close one of these famous cold cases in New Jersey, and case underscores the importance of the persistence of cold case investigation. Again, and getting justice for these families. Now, that's where I'll wrap it up with this. However, there was some things of note that I found really interesting. That again, the North Bergen in me is coming out that I will not leave a paper trail of some of the things I find extremely interesting about this case. Number one, during the talking to a former police officer about this, there was a man of interest, we'll say, and there was a sighting of a car out in Montvale the night before the discovery of the bodies that matched the description, at least matched color and style of car to this man. We know from the evidence and some of the file, the blood typing, same DNA, right? Type A was found in the grasps of one of the girls in some hair. And this man, again, circumstantial, right? He was also type A. The kind of thing that really drew a lot of attention to this man was another girl came forward and went to the North Bergen police and said, hey, I was with this guy the other night and he threatened me and said, I will burn you the same way I burned those two girls. And threatened her with a frying pan that was on a stove. And that was a detail that was never released to the public, ever. When they went to the home to investigate where the girl described, the home was set on fire the night before. So, another one of those leads. However, it was probably their most promising, But again, due to lack of evidence, they could not pursue that lead. And instead, the families then had to wait 40 some odd years for Richard Cottingham to admit guilt. That is what I got. Sorry it was really short. It's very difficult for me to get through this one. I will open up to any questions. If there are any, I'll try my best. Sure, go ahead.
There's a couple things about, made a big, how old was he? When this happened?
Sure, so he was in,
And if he confessed, how did he say he got lured into the car, that supposedly he got hitchhiking? Was it so good looking or something that, the fact that there were two of them?
correct, yeah, and that seems to be the big thought on a lot of people's minds is how does, and he's in his mid to late 30s, maybe early 40s, and again, we know it's 1974, late 30s, right? He could probably overpower two teenagers, right? However, that is a big question of,
They were at
right.
a bus stop.
right, why would these two girls who get relatively smart kids, right? Get into a random apartment somewhere, especially with the transit system that can get them out there, right? It's not like they were in a rush, right? You
Was it
know,
raining?
no, it was actually relatively nice, pretty nice August afternoon. So again, like, that's kind of the big question about this is, how did this guy get involved? Right, where did he intercept them, if that's even the case? Which, again, that's part of the investigation that they couldn't figure it out in 74, right? They just couldn't figure out how this guy's involved. Even today, he's just like, yeah, I got him, picked him up, never hitchhiking. But now we're 47 years later, this guy has access to the internet and most likely read what's going on. So,
Blood typing is kind of, is really irrelevant, it's just typing typos.
right, exactly.
They
There's-
come down after DNA.
I mean, if you did blood typing, there's probably several people in here that all have the same blood type, right? So the blood typing is a big what if.
DNA is a different story.
Exactly, but again, we lost the DNA evidence, it's been degraded, it's kind of rendered useless.
But Cottingham's blood type matched, was type A?
What happened to the other guy that they thought about? Did you say, sorry, this first guy?
So,
Why did he drop off the radar?
no evidence to tie them, like the only thing, then they look at that girl who makes the claim, it's circumstantial, you're looking for attention, and I think they looked at her as kind of like. Somebody looking for like their 15 minutes. So they just brushed her off. Again, not trying to throw the 1974 roster of the North Bergen Police under the bus, right? But again, there was a lot of pressure on them as well to figure this out, right? And this also comes on like the heels of like another murder that happens about a year or so earlier, Jeanette DiPaolo. She's not from North Bergen, right? She's not from Montague, but she is found in a very similar, not identical, right? Very similar case where she was murdered and left at kind of this place. It's a rock formation. It was called like the Devil's Teeth, and the 70s again, right? It's the early days of the satanic panic that kind of ran through the country. So a lot of people looked at that as this like, Satan has killed her, and like that even complicated that case, where that was not solved for several years, because of all the kind of rumors that were going on around it. To make matters worse, the following year in Union City, two twin children are kidnapped and never found again. So like there is like this, again, there's a lot happening, right, in a span of a couple of years, just in our small part of the world here. And these are things that don't really happen in this area in the 50s, in the 60s, in the 70s. Like they don't happen, right? I mean, some of you were here when we talked about the little girl who went missing from the orphanage, and she was found 3 days later. Right, and we saw the effort that went into finding her in 3 days, right? The same effort went into finding these girls, right? Even though I kind of undersold it a little bit. North Bergen's cops really couldn't do much, right? This was a Bergen County issue, right? They're the ones calling the shots. They're still having to deal with local towns, but,
Well, I think, talk about rumors, it was the mayor at the time, or brother, was said to be involved, you know that, right? Yeah, no, it's up to the gentleman in the back.
I heard that one.
Yeah, and the girls were found in the brother's property, or behind the property or something.
sure, yeah, I did stumble across that one. Again,
Yeah, but what I guess.
Circumstantial.
Out of town, but at the same time.
right,
I
yeah,
want to see that.
rumor, yeah, I mean, listen, that could just be our small town in North Bergen, or.
Right, they were crazy. Was he from New Jersey? Because said he was committing crimes, Jersey and New York. Just going back and forth.
To be honest with you, I try not to look too much into Cottingham. After reading some of the criminal files, I was like, that's enough of that. So I really couldn't tell you where he's from off the top of my head, after reading just,
Said Jersey and. New
he
York.
just operated out of this area. and-
That's when you were getting kids up and.
Yeah, doing, kind of like looking at this, like it was sleeping was hard for a couple of days, and, yeah, he gave the kids got a couple extra bucks, this last week. And then I told my wife I'm applying for a film license, and she said no. Just calm down.
And you're right about not hitchhiking. Those two never paid attention.
Yeah, would you like to share or?
I had talked to a good thing, I hitchhiked too. And so, and Lorraine's boyfriend was in free. Yeah. And those 16, 17-year-olds, there was articles.
Yeah, and again, listen, looking at like, again, just looking at the black and whites, right, of just school records, right? Looking through yearbooks and seeing them like, you know, and they're a freshman, they're a sophomore, they're a junior, like, just seeing that, you're like, no, like, they're solid kids, like, they're nice kids. And they just ended up, and again, not to oversimplify it, but just they happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
So where did he commit his crime, this particular crime? I know it was in a hotel, I don't,
Cottingham?
yes.
Yeah, Cottingham used several hotels throughout this area. Never a hotel here in town, right? But a lot of hotels out on 3, a lot of hotels on 46, Times Square, right? So he operated kind of in plain sight. And again, like if you look at him, he is kind of unsuspecting. The images of him today, he's, you know, with the white hair and the beard, right? Like, you know, he's a bit more recognizable or, you know, horrifying to look at. But in the 70s, I mean, he's just kind of like a guy who blends in. Which even Rel did the same thing. Kind of a guy that just blended in. And right, yeah.
What did he do for a living, you know?
Cottingham, no, I don't know what he did for a living. Kind of just tried to focus on the facts here and just see, because again, even in my like with going through this, and when I remember finding out in 2001, coworker of mine came up and was like, hey, like, did you see they solved the case? It's Cottingham, and my initial reaction was no, it's not. Right? No, it's not. But that's, you know, that's just one guy's opinion, right? That's just my opinion. All right, I'll take any other questions or anything else. That's like a tough one to get through. So
Are the parents lucky?
I no, I'm drawing a blank. Lorraine's parents passed away when she was young, correct?
Yes.
Right, Lorraine's parents passed away when she was young. She's buried with the family out in Long Island.
Yes.
Um,
Mary Ann's over in Hackers.
Right, Mary Ann's parents lived in town for a while, right? They're no longer with us as well, right? Right. Actually, the students, when they did the interviews, and I don't know, he doesn't interview me, so I don't know how they got it. They actually got to sit down with the mayor and kind of just ask him, like, because you know, he was a young guy, right? And he was kind of getting his start in politics at the time. And he said he remembers being kind of like a local committee man at that time and going to the house. And he told students about like what it was like going into the home, like, you know, and just how he realized this was just. That it was the worst thing he's ever witnessed, right? And he goes, it was just looking at their family was just. The worst thing he's ever seen, and again, he's, you know. Now he's in his what, late 70s, the mayor, right? And to say that's still the worst thing you've ever seen, right? That adds a lot of levity to what we're looking at.
There is, I saw, because that, the one he confessed to, wrote a book, and they did a video, not a video, like a documentary, where he's sitting down and he's interviewing Cunningham when he was in the hospital and stuff.
Yeah,
So that was good.
it's a good documentary. It offers like a lot of insights of what Cottingham would say and do and his thoughts, but again, it's you know, it honestly is for a lot of people that I spoke to, it's a lot of it, people don't think this is solved yet. A lot of people don't believe Cottingham, and maybe it's because of the time, right? The gap in time, why now, right? Why wait this long? Especially when he was being kind of pointed out the whole time.
In the video, like, in the video, the documentary that I watched, he said, he did this because the man was retiring. And, the sheriff, what was sheriff of Bergen.
He retired the next week,
Yeah, retired the following week.
so sorry if you're watching.
Took like a gift. This is rational.
Right, yeah, and Cottingham comes out and he admits it, so I mean. Is it just, or also, is Cottingham just also a psychopath, just trying to torture people continuously as well? Right.
No, because he had said that he didn't want to admit this because they were young and he didn't really pick on them.
Right. Yeah, it's a lot.
More dangerous. No, I don't know, right?
Mostly in their 20s,
Yeah.
right?
He's a teenager.
And a lot of them were working girls. So. That's a good way to end the conversation, but it's kind of where we are. Yeah, so I mean, listen, I will. Thanks for coming. No, please don't talk. No.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I don't like Saturdays, less traffic than Friday afternoon. But yeah, guys, listen, we'll be back next month. It's like a weird segue, and it's totally probably not appropriate, but I'm just gonna roll the dice. Next month, for October, we will be looking at a resident from this town, who is the basis for Norman Bates. Norman Bates.
Who's that?
Character.
Who says?
Oh, wait till you hear about this man's life story. And his relationship with his mother, and the film cycle will make a lot more sense. The fact that it's a guy from North Bergen makes it even more interesting. So again, thanks for coming, guys. I really appreciate it. We'll see you next one. If you ever have any questions about anything, just reach out to me. Alright, I'm easy to find all over the internet. Alright, thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Good to see you. Nathan was the yes, I did. But change the 9:30
Very, yeah.
Yes.